Hey good people, and welcome back to my channel. You all definitely know what time it is. It's time for a new video featuring how I would have rewritten Season 8 of Game of Thrones. This particular video marks my 6th episode rewrite video, and the entire episode will specifically cover how I would have changed the Battle of Winterfell from the original Season 8, as well as the immediate battle aftermath. And just for clarity, this battle is not the Long Night battle from the original season. My Long Night battle takes place in episode 8 of this rewrite series, and I would mark it as an episode with the longest projected runtime. But before we get things started, if you want to support my platform and you haven't done so already, then feel free to hit that subscribe button. My ultimate goal is to get 1,000 subscribers before the year is out. So without any further delay, let's begin. Cue the opening credits. Now back in Winterfell, this episode starts with thousands of whites camping out within 100 yards of the northern gates of Winterfell. One major change that I'll make during this battle would be the time of day that the battle takes place. In this episode, the battle at Winterfell would start during the daytime, and the sky would be cloudy, somewhat similar to the Battle of Hardhome. The battle would eventually go into the nighttime and would end early morning. Now hour after hour, more and more undead soldiers would arrive from the north and the east to join the whites that are already camped out in front of Winterfell. At this point in the episode, the Northern Alliance is shown making their final preparations for battle. The heroes leading the Unsullied, Wildlings, and Northern armies are shown taking their positions within the first level of the trenches outside of Winterfell. The game plan for the forces outside of Winterfell is to hold their lines and fall back to the next level when the Army of the Dead completely overwhelms their defenses. They are to repeat this action until the majority of the forces have retreated within the gates of Winterfell. When the Army of the Dead are well within the range of the fire catapults, then they will let loose behind the gates of Winterfell and slow down the approaching army. Archer support will be used only when the dead soldiers are within 25 feet of the gates of Winterfell. And arrows will only be used against meaningful targets such as undead animals, giants, oversized whites, or White Walkers. Tyrion, Bronn, and Podrick will be standing near the walls of Winterfell and observing what adjustments need to be made in the battle. Sansa, Missandei, and Varys will be inside the Great Hall, each with their own dragonglass dagger in case they need to join the fight. And Sir Davos will be guarding them with some of the newly trained civilians that wish to fight. Gilly as well as Baby Sam will be taking shelter in Big Sam's room, with Big Sam promising to stand outside the door and to guard them with his life. We then cut to a scene of Edmure, Howland Reed, and Ed with the combined Riverland, Lannister, and Night's Watch forces making camp deep in the Wolf's Woods west of Winterfell. They're there to make their trap for the upcoming army. They have most of their archers in the trees and they will use the forest to their advantage. We then see Ser Jorah breaking camp with the Dothraki and leading them further south of Winterfell in search of the Army of the Dead. We're brought back to Winterfell with Bran meeting directly with Dany, Jon, Jaime, Brienne, Sansa, and Arya. Bran tells them that he can't fully predict what the Night King will do, but their priority should be to preserve their armies as much as possible. Bran then tells everyone that he will be using the Ravens to do reconnaissance during the fight. The meeting is dismissed and everyone leaves except Jon. Jon asks Bran if he has any further advice or insight on how to win the battle. Bran replies to Jon that he is a seasoned, battle-tested warrior and leader. He should follow his heart and instincts instead of whatever Dany may want him to do. Jon leaves and goes outside to the courtyard area. Jon then meets up with Ghost, letting Ghost know that Ghost will be needed to join the fight if the dead breach the walls of Winterfell. Ghost gives Jon a lick, and then Jon goes to join Dany with the dragons. At this point in the episode, everyone takes their respective place in the battle. After waiting several minutes, we finally seen the Night King arriving from the north and hovering above the army with his dragon. Jon and Dany get on their dragons and they're ready to engage the Night King. As the Night King is hovering with his dragon, he takes time to scan the defenses of Winterfell, seeing the trenches as well as the catapults that are behind the gates. He then looks over at Jon and Dany and gives them a smile. We then see an icy mist covering the Night King and his army, and the Night King flying straight up into the sky, disappearing into the clouds. This move confuses Dany and Jon, who take their dragons right above Winterfell and wait for the Night King's attack. After waiting several minutes, The icy mist that was covering the Night King's army disappears, and the Night King's army is still in the exact same place. We then see 1,000 of the dead soldiers running towards the first level trenches surrounding Winterfell, and there's still no sign of the Night King. Dany then suggests that while the Night King is gone, they have a chance to destroy much of the white forces surrounding Winterfell. Jon disagrees and shares that he believes that this battle is a distraction. Dany gives Jon a command to follow her and destroy the whites in front of Winterfell, and Jon stands up to Dany, refusing to obey her command and leaving to fly south to Ser Jorah and the Dothraki. Dany then flies over the whites that are surrounding Winterfell and attacks them. As Dany is gearing up to fly towards the bulk of the Night King's forces, a dozen White Walkers come into view and start throwing ice spears towards Drogon, injuring the dragon in the process. Dany realizes that she doesn't want to risk losing Drogon, so she flies back to Winterfell and lands him inside the gates, ordering the medics to help tend to his wounds. 10,000 more whites are seen running full force towards the first level trenches, and they manage to channel their way inside the openings. Behind the barriers, we see the unsullied stabbing whites with their spears, as northern soldiers fight the whites in narrow corridor combat. As more and more whites flood the maze within the barriers, the Winterfell army falls back to the second level of trenches and allows the dead army's advancement. Tyrion then orders the firing of the catapults with fire ammunition, and with each firing, a dozen whites are killed. The remaining whites begin to avoid the catapult shots and attack Winterfell barriers from the sides. Before you know it, 20,000 more of the Night King's soldiers head towards the trenches surrounding Winterfell. The living soldiers continue to fight and draw more and more whites into the trenches. 50,000 more whites then head full force into Winterfell's trenches. When the bulk of the advancing whites have made their way over the first trench, Tyrion orders a full retreat into Winterfell. As the last soldier enters the gates of Winterfell, the gates close. Tyrion then gives Bronn the signal, and Bronn fires a fire arrow to the furthest trench because it's been soaked in oil. We then see the surrounding first level trenches engulfed in flames, and Bronn repeats the process for the remaining trenches. This move traps more than 70,000 of the 200,000 whites as they slowly burn. And as the sun begins to set, there's a temporary pause in the battle, with Tyrion saying to himself, "Your move." About 50 miles west of Winterfell, we see a force of about 25,000 whites being led by a mounted White Walker through the Wolf's Wood. The dead army is walking through a cleared path through the area, and we notice that Edmure, Howland Reed, and the remaining forces are hiding on opposite sides of the path. Edmure sees that the White Walker is leading the army with his horse, and he readies his bow and arrow fixed with the dragon glass arrowhead. Howland tells Edmure that he's heard Edmure's a terrible shot as an archer, and Howland offers to take the first shot. Edmure gives Howland Reed the bow and arrow. Howland fires away and hits the White Walker, immediately killing him and several thousand whites in the army. The rest of the Night King's army stops in their tracks, and this is when Edmure gives the go-ahead to attack. Several hundred archers hiding in the trees with dragonglass arrows begin taking aim at the whites below, and archers from the ground shoot fire arrows at the whites from opposite sides. The whites are falling by the hundreds, but there are several White Walkers in the back of their army, and they order the whites to spread out and advance their attack on the grounded Winterfell forces. The army of the living try their best to defend themselves against the attack, but they are overwhelmed and signal a retreat south of the Wolf's Woods. While the forces are running away from the Night King's army, they are also serving a purpose in delaying the second wave of attack against Winterfell. About 75 miles south of Winterfell, we see Ser Jorah and the Dothraki have their initial encounter with the Night King's army, made up of about 75,000 soldiers. The Dothraki weapons are highly effective against the whites, cutting through them like a hot knife through butter. But then they encounter White Walkers riding giant ice spiders, as well as reanimated bears and direwolves. The Dothraki begin to take heavy losses until Jon shows up riding his dragon. Jon sets fire to the bulk of the Night King's army south. Jon notices that dragonfire did nothing to the 25 White Walkers that were riding the giant ice spiders. At this point in the battle, less than 10% of the Night King's southern army remain, but Jon immediately flies northwest, leaving Ser Jorah and the Dothraki to finish off the remaining White Walkers. Back at Winterfell, about 3 hours have passed since the trenches were set on fire and the sun has completely set. The The Whites look on as the trenches burn and a White Walker comes into view examining the defenses. The Whites then begin to climb on top of the fiery trenches in one area, sacrificing themselves to make a path for the rest of the army. At this point in the episode, the northern forces for the Army of the Dead have had their numbers reduced to about 120,000 soldiers, and the Winterfell forces have only lost 100 of their 25,000 soldiers. The catapults are also running low on ammo. As the Army of the Dead make their way towards the gates of Winterfell, the Winterfell defense begin throwing firebombs towards them. This is when the Army of the Dead creates 5 additional paths over the fiery trenches by sacrificing tens of thousands of Whites. Just as Winterfell's defenses run out of firebombs, the remaining Whites are given the go-ahead to rush Winterfell. The bulk of the Night King's remaining 80,000 soldiers attack the main gates of Winterfell, while the remaining soldiers circle around the back of the castle in an attempt to scale the southern wall of Winterfell. The Unsullied are at the opening of the northern gates in Winterfell in formation, and the rest of the army are spread out throughout different parts of the campus. South of the Wolf's Woods, the Army of the Dead is chasing down the Winterfell forces. During this time, the first major casualty is Ed from the Night's Watch. The Riverland and Night's Watch forces also suffer heavy casualties, but Jon comes in and uses the dragon to eliminate most of the Whites. Jon lands Rhaegal nearby and draws his sword to help Edmure and Howland dispatch the remaining White Walkers. Edmure and Howland show gratitude to Jon for saving their lives, and Jon replies that the battle is not over yet. Jon allows Rhaegal some time to rest before heading back to Winterfell. Back at Winterfell, the Army of the Dead start to scale the walls of Winterfell. The Winterfell archers have exhausted most of their arrows, and this is when 3 giants rush the northern gate of Winterfell and break the door down. Whites immediately begin flooding in, followed by the giants. One of the giants, accompanied by a score of Whites, immediately targets the Unsullied's defensive formation. Grey Worm uses his spear and throws it at the giant, killing it instantly. Grey Worm, being completely defenseless, is then swarmed by scores of Whites and killed. Another giant is walking through Winterfell, and the archers use the last of their arrows to take it down. The third giant is seen walking closely by a White Walker, and he spots Sam. Sam is seen slaying several Whites right outside of his door. When Sam spots the giant, he tries to run away to draw the giant away from Gilly, but he gets tripped up by a White. The giant then grabs Sam and tries to choke him out. Sam takes out a dragonglass dagger and kills the giant. Sam is, however, mortally wounded. Before Sam dies, he tells himself, "Who else has killed a White Walker, a Thin, and a giant?" Sam then dies. The White Walker then goes up to Sam's door, goes inside, and spots baby Sam. The White Walker extends his arms to take baby Sam, but Gilly refuses to hand him over. The White Walker kills Gilly and takes Sam. The White Walker is seen leaving Winterfell with little Sam and heading north. Several of our remaining heroes are seen trying to fight off hordes of Whites. Jaime and Brienne are fighting side by side, as are Meera, Arya, the Hound, and Beric. The Hound has a brief panic attack due to all the fire that's surrounding him, but Beric reminds the Hound to trust in the Lord of the Light to conquer his fears. Ghost is getting in on the action and killing scores of Whites in the process. Gendry has a dragonglass warhammer and is fighting along with Bronn, Tyrion, and Ser Davos, and some of the Northern Lords. Lyanna Mormont is shown trying to take on 5 Whites by herself, and is killed before anyone can save her. Brienne becomes overwhelmed by Whites, and just as she's about to get killed, Jaime saves her and gets killed in the process. Brienne is visibly shaken and goes on a rampage fighting for her life. Dany, who's been largely absent during the fighting, has been standing near Drogon this entire time. She is shown trying to command Drogon to set fire on the very few Whites that have breached the southern gates of Winterfell. Once again, when all hope seems lost, Jon returns back to Winterfell in time to finish off much of the remaining Whites outside of Winterfell and some inside the courtyards of Winterfell. Jon gets off of Rhaegal and helps clear out some of the remaining Whites. When the threat is eliminated, Jon tells our main heroes that there are 24 White Walkers standing at 100 yards outside of the gates of Winterfell, and killing them will put an end to the battle. Jon tells Arya, Brienne, and Meera to use the tunnels under Winterfell to surprise the White Walkers, while Jon, the Hound, Beric, Bronn, and some of the other forces approach them from the front. The plan is underway, and Arya leads Brienne, Mira through the tunnels of Winterfell, while Jon leads the rest towards the White Walkers. With the best warriors off fighting the White Walkers, a force of 5,000 Whites hiding in the east of Winterfell come out of nowhere and slowly begin to circle Jon and company from the back. Tyrion sees this from afar and wishes that there was something that he could do to help. Tyrion spots Rhaegal, and Rhaegal makes direct eye contact with Tyrion. As Jon and company are surrounded by the Whites and White Walkers, Tyrion saves the day by riding Rhaegal and setting the remaining Whites on fire. When the smoke finally clears, we see Brienne and Tyrion grieving over a dead Jaime. Missandei grieves over a dead Grey Worm. Jon grieves over a dead Sam and Ed. And among the White corpses, we see very familiar faces as well. In total, the army of the dead killed 40% of the Dothraki, 90% of the combined Riverland, Lannister, and Night's Watch forces, 50% of the Unsullied, and 60% of the Northern men. A few days pass as all of the surviving Winterfell forces make their way back to the castle. The forces take time to clear out all the White corpses as well as clear the Winterfell fields of debris. Once everyone is settled back at Winterfell, all of the fallen heroes are honored and cremated. Tyrion opts to preserve Jaime's body for a proper burial. Later that night, there's a celebration at the Great Hall. Dany honors the fallen soldiers of Winterfell and makes some power moves in the process. She makes Gendry a lord and vows to award him Storm's End when the war is over. She announces that she and Jon will be getting married, and that will make Sansa Warden of the North. She plans to appoint Arya to serve as head of the Queen's Guard. Dany also announces that the Northern men will be given lands of the fallen houses to be divided evenly. This news is met with much celebration from everyone except Arya and Sansa, who wonder if Dany is trying to divide their family. The majority of the people in the Great Hall seem pretty upbeat about it. Dany, Jon, and Sansa then toast to the Great Hall, and everyone begins to party. Dany then sees a distraught Missandei and then goes to comfort her, telling her that there will be an end to the violence once she sits on the Iron Throne. Missandei asks Dany when will that happen, to which Dany replies that she really doesn't know. Missandei excuses herself from the dinner table, and Dany looks at Jon. She notices how the Northern men, as well as her own army, are gathered around Jon and celebrating him as the hero of Winterfell. Tyrion then has a word with Dany. Dany fears that Jon may be winning over her own supporters and it will cause a divide. Tyrion assures Dany that Jon doesn't want to interfere with her quest to become queen. Dany then tells Tyrion that she heard about him riding Rhaegal during the battle. Tyrion brushes off his heroic efforts as him just doing his duty. We then cut to Tormund telling a crowd around Jon tales of a man who survived death, rode a dragon, slayed White Walkers, and saved thousands of lives. Tormund and several others make a vow to follow Jon anywhere. Jon, being his usual self, gives credit to everyone involved, mainly Tyrion, Arya, Brienne, and the other heroes. This begins to sow seeds of jealousy within Dany, who knew that her direct contributions to the war had little to no effect on the outcome. During the celebration, Sansa receives a letter from one of Varys' spies. Upon reading it, Sansa asks Jon, "Is it true?" To which Jon replies, "Is what true?" Sansa gets everyone's attention in the hall and announces that Jon is the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark. This news is a big shock to everyone in the room, but everyone begins to put the pieces together. Jon came back from the dead, Jon rode a dragon, Jon did things no ordinary person could do, and Jon was indeed ice and fire. Jon is at a loss of words during this time, but because Jon doesn't believe in lying, Jon publicly tells everyone that it's true. Dany is completely confused and angered by the news, but before she could truly react, Bran enters the room with an announcement. Bran was asked what he was doing throughout the battle, and Bran replies that he was tracking the Night King's movements. Bran has learned that the Night King has flown all the way down to Dorne, and has taken the winter with him. The Night King plans to raise a brand new army along with White Walkers, and use them to attack all of Dorne, the Reach, the Crown Lands, and before finishing off the rest of Westeros. The Night King will also use his powers to cast an everlasting darkness across the world. Several people in the Great Hall begin questioning what will be their next move. Tyrion shares that traveling from Winterfell to Dorne will take several months, and that's not counting the time it will take for the army to rest and stock up on supplies. This is when Edmure suggests that they should make their last stand at River Run because of all the strategic advantages. Everyone in the room agrees that River Run should be their next move. Ravens are then sent out to every remaining house in Westeros, warning citizens of the looming threat and urging them to make their last stand at River Run with them. About a week passes to give the combined armies time to rest and stock up on supplies. This is when Melisandre, the rest of the Red Priest, and the soldiers of the Fiery Hand arrive at Winterfell. Melisandre is initially greeted by an angry Sir Davos and Jon, but Dany welcomes the new allies with open arms. Melisandre informs Dany that they would have arrived sooner, but they were fighting the remaining White Walkers at White Harbor, as well as some of the stragglers along the King's Road. Melisandre assures Dany that her purpose is to bring light to a threat of everlasting darkness, nothing more. Sir Davos is visibly angry at Melisandre's arrival, but knows that she can help the cause. Jon lets Melisandre know that he'll be watching her closely. Kivara spots Varys and smiles in his direction, as we the audience recall the last conversation they shared in Meereen. Varys is visibly upset and leaves the meeting, asking Tyrion and Sir Davos to follow him. Once they are alone, Varys shares that one of his birds told him about Euron attacking the northern civilians at Dragonstone, but he was defeated by Theon. Varys also shares information regarding Cersei's war elephants, zombie army, and the threat Cersei may pose if Dany and the North win the war against the army of the dead, or if the Night King tries to attack King's Landing and is successful. Tyrion realizes that Cersei is now a lost cause, and he has a difficult conversation with Varys and Sir Davos about a plan to save Westeros. Tyrion summons Arya and the Hound to discuss a secret mission that requires a great deal of stealth and finesse. Arya consults with Tyrion about what she would contribute towards their secret mission, and that she would need to see something from Jaime's body. Once Arya has everything she needs, Tyrion goes to the gates of Winterfell and sees Arya and the Hound off as they leave Winterfell. Varys does his part by sending ravens to Yara and Theon at Dragonstone. Bran is staring at Tyrion from afar and saying to himself, "Another Targaryen in the world." Jon and Dany have another head-to-head confrontation. Dany and Jon are trying to steal her army and right to the Iron Throne. Jon assures Dany that he doesn't want to steal her army or have the Iron Throne. He just wants to save his people. Dany reminds Jon that her brother was killed for trying to betray her and threatens Jon to not do the same. Jon walks away in anger. Back in Dorne, we see that snow is falling and much of the buildings are in ruin. The Night King has dozens of children lined up to turn them into White Walkers. We see that the Night King uses his magic to make the White Walker's speed grow. The Night King looks on with delight. Well folks, this marks the end of a very lengthy rewrite video. And if you made it all the way through this video without skipping any parts, then God bless you. Once again, thank you for tuning in to my rewrite video. If you have any comments or feedback related to this rewrite, then let me know in the comment section and I'll be sure to reply to it. And in case you're wondering, the story is just going to get more and more crazier over the next 4 episodes in this series. How crazy might you ask? Well, stay tuned to find out. Next Wednesday, same time, same channel. Peace.